Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio. Hello and happy Friday. I'm Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
We talked about Augustin Fresnel this week.
We did. I'm glad you put this on your list because someone asked us at some point in the past for an episode on the Fresnel lens. And then I feel like I was at one of the museums in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and saw one of the lenses and was like,
beautiful.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Someone asked us for an episode on this. Maybe I will put that on the list. And when I started looking into maybe doing an episode, I was so focused on the lenses that I was like, I don't think I can make this work. But you made it work.
Barely, because I'm on the struggle bus with the science of this one. So hopefully whoever wanted this episode, I don't recall that email, is not like, you messed it all up. You made a mess. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is very cute and interesting about Fresnel is that when he started his career as a civil engineer, and I think this story, it's from a biography I read on him, and it was when he was not fully completed. He was like in his student but working the job phase.
Mm-hmm.
That he got posted to one of these towns where he was working, and like the expectation would be, as someone is starting their professional career, for them to like seek out, the town's leadership, society people, etc., as like just a matter of course in how you would establish yourself in French society at the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But he apparently didn't do any of this.
Yeah.
He instead got to be friends with one of the teachers in town and just wanted him to like teach him about more science stuff. And it was like,
Okay.
I just want to be a goofball and learn
Yeah.
more nerdy things. I found that so charming. Like, he did not care about social climbing,
Yeah.
even if it was going to help his career. What he cared about was, I really love science and I want to learn more. Who knows what I don't know? That's very, very charming.
Let me go find that person.
I
Chat with
love
them.
it so much. I love that so much.
Yeah.
There was also, and I didn't get into all of it because, one, it would have taken us down a side street that I didn't think was really that interesting. And two, I honestly had a hard time parsing it all out. That council of scientists that were reviewing his work, like
Mhm.
that Arago was on, there was so much infighting among those men,
Mm-hmm.
like that it was like the real scientists of France. It was, they just wanted to argue about everything, and like they would be best friends for a little while, and then they would have a falling out, and then they would, work on a project together, and then get in an argument over who did more work, and just like the panel. Like Arago and Biot had fallen out, and then Poisson had become Arago's enemy because they had both been up for the same academic appointment, and Poisson got it and Arago didn't, even though he was the more deserving on paper, and like they just drama. So like it's again one of those things where I watch Real Housewives and I will judge no one for watching garbage television, but the proclivity many people have to characterize women as being, kind of dramatic and argumentative with their friends, and for there to be like frenemy issues is usually characterized as something that women engage in, whereas you'll see all the time on social media everywhere where it's like men are just like, yeah, whatever, and they just keep going, and it's like,
Right.
There's so many historical and contemporary, frankly, examples of that not being the case at all. And this was one because woof, the cat fights in this group. Here is my other personal takeaway from this, which I love.
Okay.
And I want to preface this by saying this is not me in any way voicing my displeasure at my own work, but I have always felt very strongly, and I know people will disagree, that, like, your work should almost be the least interesting thing about you. You know what I mean? Like, that whole thing of, like, follow your passion and it will never be work, for a lot of people, that is baloney, because the second your passion becomes, like, your responsibility and your, way that you make money,
Now it's a job.
the fun falls off. But I love that Fresnel had a whole career that he was doing in civil engineering, but he got famous for his passion.
Yeah.
And that makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Because you're never locked into the one thing that you do to make a living.
Right.
You can be, and if you love your job, that's awesome. That's amazing and cool. But, like, I know a lot of people who spend a lot of time saying things like, "I wish I were doing something that is not my job," and I'm always that friend that's, "It's not too late. You go back to school, get your Egyptology degree, do the thing or the thing." And I know that there is also the fact that I do not understand because I am not a parent. Like, if you have a family, there are just extra
Yeah.
I don't want to say it in a way that sounds like, I'm denigrating kids or families, but there are extra responsibilities that are a drag on your time and energy that would make it harder to do extra stuff, extra projects.
Yeah.
But you can do things that are not. It's kind of like what I always tell people that want to get into podcasting, that only want to pitch shows to networks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why? Because you have all the technology in your pocket. If you just want to start a podcast today, you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people think they will magically get like a big paycheck if they sign a deal with a network, and that's not really always the case. And I'm like, but if you just want an easier job, there are probably others that are actually easier.
Yeah. I
and
would not
involve
call our job
less
easy.
scrabbling on the front end, right? Especially anyway, I could have a whole discussion about podcasting, but my point being, you don't have to ask permission to do the projects that you want to do. I know some things require more overhead and resources than maybe the average person has. But I also just feel like if you can figure out a way to engage with the thing that you love, you might be more fulfilled. And for me, I mean, I care about the things we talk about, and I enjoy getting to learn things all the time and share things all the time. But I also I always caution people about, your job is not your identity. Because unless you work for yourself, it can always change on a dime. And then it's very harrowing. So anyway, that's Holly's life lessons that you may or may not want to discard. But anyway, Augustin Fresnel, smarter than I can really comprehend. Like, the whole idea of measuring waves of light and making mathematical equations around them not only is inscrutable to me, but it terrifies me. Like, I'm literally stricken with, like, oh, I think my tummy hurts. Like, I don't mean to sound like a math is hard person, but for me, mathematics is a challenge.
Yeah.
At that level, when you are trying to make sense of things that are hard to easily see visually. Like, you can make a chart of what it is. You can make a drawing of how a light wave works, but I still am like,
yeah. For me, arithmetic is the bigger challenge.
See, the arithmetic part, I'm actually usually okay with. The actual, like, doing of the sums and calculations. But coming up with the equations is the part that, for me, I'm like, whew, no thank you. But then I remind myself, if ever you're having one of these moments in your life where you're like, I don't feel like a very bright person because I don't understand this. My thing that I always tell myself is, well, I bet Augustin Fresnel couldn't make a dress, and I can. So everybody has their skill sets.
Yeah.
And you can learn most things if you really, like, focus your energies on it.
Yeah.
But I know that I will never want to expend the level of energy and focus to learn these kinds of mathematics that it would take. So I'm just going to sit in awe of the people for whom they come naturally or for whom they have learned how to do them, and then I'll go make a dress.
Yeah. Do that. This week, we talked about Maria Amparo Ruiz de Burton, who I find very interesting. Most of what I have to talk about in the behind the scenes, though, is not about her. It is about the thing that inspired the whole episode, which was the thing from the White House website that alleges that President Trump is right about the Smithsonian by using a bunch of out of context and distorted and sometimes just frankly false stuff. The first thing on there we said in the episode is it was like an image from a portal that was called Talking About Race that was at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And so I want to start by saying I do understand why there were people that found this objectionable, and there were people that found it objectionable coming from multiple directions. Because this was a graphic that was about, like, things that are part of what we think of as, like, the dominant white culture in the United States.
Right.
And it had things on it like what was a good example? It had things on it like there were things about it that were related to, like, work ethic. And so the incredibly reductive, least generous possible read on that kind of stuff is what wound up going viral.
Of course.
And so people interpreted it as saying, like, the Smithsonian is saying that Black people don't have a work ethic. Well, that's not what it was saying at all.
Right.
And also, like, I can see how the knee-jerk response to that from multiple different angles could be like, that is upsetting. But also, I think about the fact that, like, we live in a society where so much about a person's value is connected to their work and how much they work.
Yeah.
And, like, it's kind of a crappy way to live, honestly.
This ties into our recent discussion where I went on a soapbox about how your job should not be your identity.
Yeah. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how at the beginning of my career, I had a series of jobs in North Carolina, not a great state for worker protection. In fact, I think it has been ranked last for worker protection. But I had a series of jobs where in your first year of work, you accrued 5 days of vacation. But you were not allowed to take any of that vacation until you had worked there for a year.
Yeah, that's rough.
Which is stingy. And because these jobs were terrible, I changed jobs after about a year, like 3 different times, which kind of meant that, like, I went 3 years with no kind of time off.
Right.
And, you know, we were living in a society where people were like, yeah, that's normal. I think that's bad, honestly. So thing number one that was on this, like, White House article, number one, I understand some of the criticism. It was also at the time framed in, like, a very reductive and out of context kind of way. And again, taken down 5 years ago and is still the thing that people trot out to say, this is why I think the Smithsonian is bad. Also, some of the stuff that is in this list, I'm just going to read a quote. The National Museum of the American Latino features programming highlighting, and then a scare quote starts, animated Latinos and Latinas with disabilities. That's actually a quote from the museum website. With content from a disabled plus-size actress and an ambulatory wheelchair user who educates on their identity being Latinx or Latinx, people pronounce that 2 different ways, LGBTQ+, and disabled. This is referencing a literally 2-minute long video with an audio description of some of the visual elements so that it is accessible to blind people. And I'm like, what is your problem with this? You're mad that there's a 2-minute video
Yep.
at the website that has a disabled plus size actress. Like,
because
this
how
is
dare
absurd.
how dare
How
those
dare there
people
be?
exist and talk about their existence.
Ambulatory wheelchair users also exist and face a layer of, like, hostility in public that is infuriating. Hey, everybody, if you see a person who is using a wheelchair and they get out of the wheelchair for some reason, this is a normal thing that can happen. Mind your business.
It doesn't mean they don't need the wheelchair.
Correct. The next thing I wrote down on this list, the Museum of American Art uses American sculpture, quote, to invite dialogue and reflection on notions of power and identity. Who cares? What do you think art is for? Whoever or whatever wrote this article.
Right. Right. This is, I mean,
my spouse thinks that a large language model wrote this. And that would explain the garbled sentence that inspired the episode.
That seems fair. I also, though, could see people who don't like art writing that, who don't understand what art is.
If you think the purpose of art is to stand and look at something on a wall and go, pretty, then maybe it is objectionable to you.
Or to validate what you already think you know. I mean, that's not art.
Invite dialogue, fine. Reflection on notions of power and identity, fine. It also says the American History Museum's exhibit about Benjamin Franklin focuses almost solely on slavery, directing visitors to learn more about his electrical experiments and the enslaved people of his household, noting his scientific accomplishments were enabled by the social and economic system he worked within. The statement that this exhibit about Benjamin Franklin at the American History Museum focuses almost solely on slavery is patently untrue. Also, it's important that we recognize how many people's discoveries and accomplishments were facilitated by the enslaved people who were enslaved to their households, family members, including a lot of times wives, daughters, sisters, who were doing a lot of the behind the scenes work. If you have a problem with this, this is your problem, not the Smithsonian's.
Right. Well, and the thing is, too, I think even if it's not a direct part of someone's work that they got credit for, when you think about how much of so many people that we have as a country long revered as important and great thinkers, lawmakers, etc., how much of their day-to-day life was just easier and enabled them to think about those things, invent things, etc., because other people were handling just the basics of their lives, right? Like making sure they were fed, that they had a clean place to sleep, and that they, like, that is also part of that contribution that enabled those achievements that, you know, is not necessarily a direct collaboration on any of it, but is still a very important part of it happening.
Yeah.
That just nobody gets acknowledged.
Right. Correct. All of it. So again, I'm not going to talk about every single thing on this list. There's so much stuff that's in it that is just like really distorted or out of context or cherry picked or framed in a weird way, or the link goes back to the American Enterprise Institute and not the Smithsonian, so you cannot see for yourself what is exactly it's referencing. But here is the thing that infuriated me the most in the moment that I was looking at it. Here's what the White House website says. An American History Museum exhibit features a depiction of the Statue of Liberty, quote, holding a tomato in her right hand instead of a torch and a basket of tomatoes in her left hand instead of a tablet. That is all that the sentence says. I feel like this sentence was selected to make uninformed people think that this is a depiction of the Statue of Liberty who is about to throw a tomato at America.
Maybe they're scared of lycopene.
Oh my God. Maybe tomatoes are too acidic for their tummies in their post-50 age.
Maybe.
This depiction of the Statue of Liberty is also the lead image from this Federalist article that was a source of a lot of these White House complaints about the Smithsonian. And this is the Immokalee Statue of Liberty. It was made by the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers started out as a coalition of tomato workers in Immokalee, Florida. Tomato workers are in fields in grueling conditions, picking the tomatoes and growing the tomatoes and caring for the plants. Like, they're literally feeding us. They were going on a march for more than 200 miles to try to get better working conditions and a penny more per bucket of tomatoes. A penny. The bosses were refusing them a penny per bucket of tomatoes raised. Penny.
Yeah.
They made a representation of the Statue of Liberty with brown skin, as many of them have, holding tomatoes, and took it on a march for 200 miles to advocate for themselves. And the White House website has pulled this out of context to make it look like a different thing instead of what is fundamentally an American story. Workers in the fields trying to get a better life for themselves with a penny more per a bucket of tomatoes. If you have a problem with this, I am angry at you personally.
Right. And I think it's important to note, this isn't a thing that was made as a piece of statement artwork. It is paper mache.
Right.
It's a piece that, as you said, was part of a march that the Smithsonian then acquired as being culturally important in capturing this moment in our history.
Yeah. Yeah. It is the kind of thing that should be in the American History Museum. This whole article, we talked about scare quotes at the introduction of the episode. This whole article, I'm putting article in scare quotes. This is a bulleted list that I am uncertain about the provenance of it. I hated it. I hate everything that's going on with the federal government targeting the Smithsonian and making like distorted, twisted, untrue arguments about what the museum is doing. And the fact that they were like, let's take this thing that was related to workers trying to get a penny more per bucket of tomatoes. I said potatoes. Tomatoes is what it was, obviously. And try to make this distort it to make a political point of rooted in things that are untrue. Infuriated me. The whole list was infuriating.
Yeah.
Anyway.
To make things laughy.
Okay.
Not that we need to, but this isn't the laughy part, but when the point in Maria's story where her husband dies and she goes back to decide that she's going to try to run the ranch.
Right.
It also made me think of another woman we've talked about in California history who kind of like ended up becoming a captain of industry, which was Harriet Williams Russell Strong.
Oh, yeah. Which also has connections to the water rights stuff that we mentioned. Yeah.
Correct. And it was just kind of like the spider web of history stories that all kind of come together to make the fabric of our story as humans. I was like, oh, I see the tendrils reaching each other.
Yeah.
And then when you mentioned that she knew Mary Todd Lincoln, I started laughing. Which I don't think was edited into the thing, but only because I have been thinking about the play Oh Mary.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Which I was hoping to see when Jinx Monsoon was in it and not working out. And hopefully I will get up there for one of the other Marys. But
yeah.
Just thank goodness for artists is what I have to say.
Yeah. I'm also very curious about her friendship with Verena Davis, Jefferson Davis's wife.
Yeah.
Jefferson Davis, president of the Confederacy. As I understand it from my limited knowledge, Verena was less like Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy. The Confederacy existed because of slavery to further the institution of slavery. That is why it was there. And as I understand it, Verena was less strident in these opinions than her husband was. But I did not, I don't know tons of detail about that. But I'm very curious about Maria's friendship with her.
Yeah.
I think we do have some correspondence between the two of them still surviving today. There's a collection of Maria's correspondence. Much of it is like the commentary on the correspondence is in English, but a lot of the correspondence is in Spanish. And my reading of Spanish is like preschool level. So it's not something that I could personally read.
Right.
But that is something that if I had had like infinite time to work on the episode, I would have explored more of her relationships with both of them, both Mary Todd Lincoln and Verena Davis.
Yeah, that's the play, right? Her relationship with Verena Davis. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I will say this from my own lens, which is not always the most magnanimous, which is that I have a hard time. Like, I don't want to break bread with people that disagree with me fundamentally on human rights.
Right.
So I'm like,
correct.
Well, how does this work exactly?
Yeah. I don't know. And I don't fully know like how many other women were around when they were in Virginia,
right?
Where Confederate prisoners of war were being held. Like, what other opportunity did she have for socializing? I did not look much farther into that. It's one of those things where, like, she for sure pointed out hypocrisies related to abolitionists and the fight to abolish slavery, with white abolitionists also often being very racist. But, she was operating within her own prejudices as well. So, yeah. I find her very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not heard of her until this thing from the White House website made me so angry that I had to go on a tear for the podcast.
Hooray.
Whatever is happening for you this weekend, I hope it is great. If it can't be great, I hope it's as good as possible and as easy as possible. And if you're able to take some time I just looked at how long we've been recording and I'm like, man, this is long behind the scenes. So I hope you're able to take some time to recover from my lengthy diatribes in today's behind the scenes. We'll be back with a Saturday Classic tomorrow and something brand new on Monday. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.